he was his best friends, or one of best friends with Angela Rayner, now the Deputy Prime Minister. This is a cabal, a cartel, a mafia, a Labour Party mafia. And Elon Musk has said nasty things about Elon Musk, used the term rape genocide apologist. Yes, that was probably the worst thing he said. Rape genocide is a proven tactic of the Pakistani regime against the Bangladeshis in the 70s.
We will not tolerate dissent. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. It's been a strange week. For some reason, for the first time ever, Labour seems to have got themselves into trouble. Not an hour goes by without them doing something that everybody else would have said, for God's sake, what are you doing on that? It's sending the complete wrong signal across the country. But first of all, before we get into that, welcome to our guest, Miah. Hi, pal. How you doing?
Nick, always a pleasure, my friend. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. It's been a while since we've chatted, been a while since we've bumped into each other at one of the organised demonstrations where we're always trying to raise this issue of the grooming gangs. Now, for people who may not know you, all your contact details are in the description of this video, so please click on it and start following Raja, because you will be extremely impressed. Unlike many people in this country, you're not afraid to speak out about this issue, and you've been doing it for a very long time.
I have. In terms of the specific issue of the grooming gangs, 6 years now, Nick. It's over 6 years we've been campaigning. I've been campaigning relentlessly in my hometown of Oldham. And I come to this, Nick, because I believe in democracy. I believe in a liberal Western democracy. And for a long time in my life, I worked in those places where the rule of law had broken down, where despots had taken over, and I've seen the devastating effect it's left on communities. So I know what happens when it goes wrong. And that is why I refuse to look the other way, and I refuse to let the likes of now Keir Starmer and many ministers in His Majesty's government turn a blind eye to what is now confirmed, Nick. I know last time I was on one of your YouTube shows, YouTube censored it, I think, didn't they? You know, when you had to go and have a conversation. Now, let me be very clear, as a direct result of our campaigning, I'm not taking responsibility. Our is a universal term for so many of us, many of them before I came along, but I bring a certain directness and a certain background in campaigning that does not exist in this field. For too long, too many of those who have fought alone have either been working class voices who do not know how to navigate the world of policy, who have been easily sidelined and demonized as far right and racist. And then also, with the greatest of respect, survivors who've come to this having endured horrific crimes against them, and many of them are damaged. And that's the truth of it. I don't mean it as in any way disrespectful. So I come to this with a unique set of skills. I didn't think that at the time, Nick. It's just by operating in this area for as long as I have. And I've been at the forefront of leading this campaign to what transpired in Parliament yesterday. And now, as a direct result of what transpired in Parliament yesterday, many people say, oh, we've lost. And the bandwagon, the political bandwagon's moved on. And the newspapers have moved on and all the rest of it. No, these are our communities. These are our home. And above all, these are our children. And I genuinely mean that. And I think those of you who know me will know I genuinely mean that. And what I have endured, because I refuse to look the other way to the grooming and gang rape of children. Now, a matter of fact, YouTube can't take this down. X won't take this down. Now it's a matter of fact. It's a matter of fact that there has been systematic industrial scale grooming and gang rape across towns and cities. White working class girls. Now, a matter of fact, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, stood up in Parliament and used the term Pakistani heritage rape gangs. Matter of fact. All of this now is in the open. It is now also in the open that those of us who have been speaking out against this are not far right. We are not racists. And it is a matter of fact that one day in Parliament we will go back and we will correct those record books because they have demonized so many of us. If you go and look in the record books in Hansard, I am a decorated individual, Nick. I am recorded in Hansard as a consequence of the MP of my hometown who's neck deep in this scandal. He stood in Parliament and named me as a far-right racist.
Everybody's a racist these days. That term means absolutely nothing today.
No, but it means nothing today because we've endured that, Nick. You, me, so many of us have endured that. We are from respectable backgrounds with respectable careers. We have devoted our lives to public service. And this is what they did to us. And this is what they did to us because we refused to surrender children.
Absolutely. Right. Let's jump into this now. So Labour's in trouble at the moment for not holding a national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. But that didn't come out of thin air. That came out of the fact that Oldham Council, your council, asked the government for a national inquiry. Why did they ask for that and why has it been rejected?
6 years, relentless campaigning, 6 years. They asked for it because we forced them. Let's be very clear. They didn't willingly write a letter to the government. I think it was 6 times or 7 times. I've lost count, Nick. Labour Party run council after Labour Party run council blocked calling in the government. Votes, motions blocked calling in the government. Survivors in the public gallery screaming in anguish as council leader after council leader after council leader blocked it. First person to block it was a man called Sean Fielding, leader of Oldham Council. He stood up in the council chamber and uttered these infamous words, barefaced lies. I repeat, barefaced lies. We campaigned. It took us 18 months before the next election that came along. Relentlessly campaigned. He would mock us online. He sent national newspapers after me. They wrote smear after smear against me because they are connected. Fielding was a protege for Jim McMahon, the MP. He was his best friends, or one of best friends with Angela Rayner, now the Deputy Prime Minister. This is a cabal, a cartel, a mafia, a Labour Party mafia, and they came after us. We took Sean Fielding out, regardless of what he did. At the ballot box, we voted him out. Then came Arooj Shah. Arooj Shah immediately started crying and talking about misogyny and how she's a victim of racism. Accused me of misogyny, accused me of being a racist towards her. I had dared object to her having some form of friendship hanging off the arm of the getaway driver of Dale Cregan, a convicted heroin dealer, released information.
Matter of fact as well. Again, matter of fact.
Matter of fact, his name is Irishimi Mohammed Imran. Mohammed Imran was convicted twice for crimes against me. He had me followed home. These are dangerous criminals. Had me followed home twice. He was convicted of crimes against me. He openly hangs off her arm. He goes to the council. He stands in the council chamber where the votes are being counted. He's a key member of her campaign team. And as recently as 2 months ago, 3 months ago, he featured on Oldham Council branded high-vis vests or whatever they were out as part of a community ambassador program for the council. This is what is going on in my town, right? Now, we campaigned against her. She had me arrested, falsely arrested, maliciously arrested. The police threatened me. The police threatened me and said, if you campaign, we will lock you up. This is a liberal Western democracy. In the places where I have been, where the police threaten people and say, if you campaign, we'll put you in prison. Those aren't the sort of places I want to live in. Those are the sort of places that we give refuge to people who are fleeing. Not my own nation, not my own country. The police, Andy Burnham is neck deep in this, and we'll go to him later. We campaigned against Arooj Shah. We removed her from power. When we started this, the Labour Party had 47 of the 60 seats. All the time, the opposition are finding some courage because they've finally seen someone who is not using this as a pedestal to go somewhere else. This is my home. I buried my mother in the local cemetery. My daughter goes to the local school. This is the community that I belong to. Along came Amanda Chadderton, the third council leader. Amanda Chadderton, during her tenure, Burnham's report came out. 3 years it took us to push Burnham to release his report. We'll talk about Burnham's report in a moment. Amanda Chadderton infamously stood up in a council meeting and uttered the words, "You can't say it destroyed their lives." It being grooming and gang rape. You can't say it destroyed their lives. Again, matter of fact, I don't operate in innuendo or half truths or suggestions or conspiracy theories. This is outrageous for
Absolutely shocking.
yeah, for a mother, she works, I think at the time at Manchester Council, because all of these councils are interconnected. Yeah, because the councils tend to give people jobs who then tend to have political appointments in neighbouring Labour Party local authorities. All of it is, it is, isn't it? It's like a cabal in terms of how it operates. And you have experience of that. Now, we started to campaign to remove Amanda Chadderton. I led that campaign. We mobilised some independents. Just before the election, the police came and arrested me. Dawn raided my house. By now, it's become a familiar occurrence. Dawn raiding a man's house with no criminal record, decorated by the former monarch with 20 years plus of public service at the highest level of government. Dawn raided my house repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. This time they dragged me in and spoke to my solicitor. By now I've got a legal team, Nick, and my solicitor sits down and tells me, Roger, they've sent off some paperwork for a fast tracking charging decision to the CPS. Their aim is to lock you up, put you on remand. I have no criminal record, Nick. And they've not even interviewed me for anything at this point. The aim is to lock you up, put you on remand, and prevent you from campaigning in the election.
Yeah, they wanted you to be a political prisoner, like the dozens we already have in jail.
Yes, yes, 100%. And what happened? I am not the sort of man who is easily intimidated. For over 3 years, I've been from courtroom to courtroom, fighting my innocence. I walked out of that police station. I was still in my pajamas, Nick, because when they arrest you, yeah, they just kick you out. I walked to the tram station near the police station, got on the tram to a whole host of people looking at me, caught the tram, got off at another tram station because the tram doesn't come to where I live, went and knocked on a friend's door who gave me a lift home. The next day, I woke up and I mobilized the team and we went out campaigning. Andy Burnham came to Oldham to try and rescue Amanda Chadderton. We defeated Amanda Chadderton at the ballot box despite the machinery of the Labour Party and the state attempting to stop us. 3 Labour Party leaders in succession removed. The following year, and again, no public inquiry, continuing to vote it down. The following year was an all-out election. It was our chance. The Labour Party now in Oldham, against the national trend, remember this is before the general election where the Labour Party got a massive, massive majority. Against the national trend, we decimated the Labour Party from 47 seats to 27 seats. That is how we beat them at the ballot box. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a gangster. The people who follow me believe in democracy, and we have mobilized the town this way. And we forced the council then to have a vote. And that council had to have a vote in that way because to stay in power, Arud Shah's now back as leader of the council, she needed to do a deal with 4 independents and to try and placate their communities because they got elected on the promise that they would never work with this administration. I have the paperwork. They then had to sign off the public, a letter to the Home Secretary calling for a public inquiry. And we proved in that council meeting that the reason they were writing a letter to the Home Secretary calling for a public inquiry because of severe failings in the assurance review published by Andy Burnham. Because Andy Burnham is neck deep in this cover up, because Andy Burnham went away and commissioned two men, Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway, so-called experts who spent over 3 years messing around, produced a report, shouted and screamed, "This is not a cover up, this is not a cover up." The report was full of cover-ups. You've just got to read it in a certain way. The report was full of cover-ups. I'm sure you've read the report. The report was full of cover-ups. And every allegation I had released that they dared to investigate, every allegation I had released was proven to be 100% accurate. And for that, they have tried to have me imprisoned. That letter went to the government. To this day, I can't get hold of that letter. I will have to put in a freedom of information request, in terms of what did he actually write to the government. And the response came from Jess Phillips about October time. In the December council meeting, there's a pack that comes out. It's like a green book, and all the paperwork's published. The December council meeting made the news because the meeting collapsed. It was sabotaged by a man called Mark Hinz, who got up and started shouting and screaming. He's Arud Shah's independent lieutenant on that council. He was former Labour Party member, props up Shah's administration, started abusing some of the Conservative councillors, shouting and screaming. Public record, the videos are online. They sabotaged that meeting and made it collapse. Buried in the paperwork of that meeting was a PDF, the letter back from government, like agenda item 13 PDF. There's nothing as to what it was, what that letter was. I got that letter in November and I'm in December, and I'm sat there looking at it, and I'm thinking, Raja, when do you want to release this letter? I released it on New Year's Day. I released that letter on New Year's Day with Jess Phillips, Minister for Safeguarding Girls, refuses a public inquiry. As has often been the case in this journey of ours, Nick, the national media pick up on it, run it as some sort of exclusive that they've done. Doesn't matter. We don't care. We care about our kids. I don't need to make a name, Nick. I've made my name. You've made your name. I don't need to make a name. And I've realized that a name means bugger all. My priority is to be able to raise my daughter the best I can. Look after and engage with a small circle of friends and family that I have, and be the best person I can be, and serve those who I can still serve. None of us who genuinely engage in this space enter this space to want to be famous or popular, to make a name. We have a genuine desire for public service. And men like you, men like me, are fewer and fewer and fewer.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Career game. You can see it. You know it. I look at it, and it's not the world I entered. I entered a world where I worked for Oldham Council. My first job was for Oldham Council. It was the proudest day of my life that I'd managed to get a job in a council in a town I grew up, where I'd be working and helping children.
Yep, I did the same. I spent a decade at Manchester Council. Changed my life, put me on the footing of public service and working with kids and saving kids. And there was the lessons I learned there that made me set up an award-winning charity. So it changes your life when you work for a council.
Yeah, for those of us who enter it in the way we enter it, from coming from the communities we do, because, so this letter comes, I publish it, all hell breaks loose. That's where most people came to this journey. Around New Year's Day and a few days afterwards, all hell breaks loose. The outrage, the Conservatives get involved, and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the way the Conservatives got involved. I have no axe to grind with them, because at a local level, my friends, the likes of Lewis Quigg, and others, Dave Arnott, they've endured so much for speaking out on this. They've wrote to the government themselves. They wrote to their own Conservative government begging them to intervene. And the government said, oh, no, for us to intervene, you've got to go through due process, and the council has to write to us, not the Conservative group in the council. Like, who cares who's writing the letter when children are being gang raped? Yeah, you've seen the Home Office report that came out. Was it 100,000 others signed it? More? And forced them to release that report. And when that report came out, those of us who actually read the report will have seen it as a cover-up. It fudged the data on purpose and avoided referencing Pakistani rape gangs that now the government have been forced to reference. And we fought that. We campaigned against that. And we looked at that and said, this report is a cover-up and we will continue. And we were called by these lefties. We said, oh no, there's a government report now. What are you still whinging at? You're a bunch of racists.
No,
That's what forced the report. The Conservatives got involved. Obviously, we've got reform in there. And they're on a journey, Nick. I'm not the best of fans. I'm not the worst of fans. You can only work, we don't have the luxury of choice. Men like us, people like us don't have the luxury of choice. We can only work with what is out there. Yeah, and that's how we've got to where we've got to in terms of in Oldham. So we can only, and I've reached out to, is it Rupert Lowe? I reached out to, what's the guy, the deputy leaders? Is it Tice, Richard Tice? Yeah. And I'm trying to encourage them the best I can and say, look, I have a set of skills. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Nudging them from the background. Kenny Badenoch was on, she at PMQ. If you go and listen to what I said a few days ago, she pretty much quoted word for word the allegations that I presented with evidence. I'm all right with that. I want none of this but this to be fixed. And we knew that we'd lose the vote. But this wasn't about winning the vote. This was about raising awareness to a point where we now move on to the next steps.
And what are those steps?
First and foremost, the world now knows. Forget the country, the world now knows.
This has been talked about across the world on their news channels. We're being spoken about now across the world as if we're a third world banana republic.
We are. Yeah. I've worked in third world banana republics.
Yeah.
Well, how are we better, Nick? How are we better?
Yeah. If this was happening in another country, the UK Parliament would be talking about putting sanctions on that country until they stop raping their own children. That's what we'd be doing if it was a different country. So we need some countries saying that in their parliaments about us.
We have facilitated, as a country, as a government, our government has been active partners in the facilitation of the gang rape of hundreds of thousands of children, working class children, over decades in exchange for what? Power, votes, maintaining a myth of how a multicultural vision that they try and portray actually is not working on the ground?
I think they've done
for coming to those conclusions.
I think they've done it for a much more simple, cowardly answer. And I think they did it out of convenience, because doing something different would have been hard work, would have caused waves, would have ruined people's careers, would have changed the country. And it's easier just to continue with the status quo and not rock the boat. And everyone who did that's a coward.
Yeah, coward is the right word. Complicit. Yesterday, 300 and more Labour Party MPs whipped, Nick, whipped to say you can't vote for a public inquiry into the cover-up of the gang rape of children. And Jess Phillips sat there. This is Jess Phillips, who does nothing but abuse people in Parliament, has done nothing but abuse people for a decade. I will stab him in the front, not the back. Her words in regards to Corbyn. And now she's suddenly a victim. Oh, I'm a woman. I'm a victim. Elon Musk has said nasty things about Elon Musk used the term rape genocide apologist. Yes, that was probably the worst thing he said. Rape genocide is a proven tactic of the Pakistani regime against the Bangladeshis in the 70s. Rape genocide is a matter of fact. It's a strategy used in Pakistan. It is culturally embedded in the psyche of that nation, that their men were sent out to go and try and breed, infect the breed of another race and commit genocide. Matter of fact, The Guardian reported it. I put a link up of a Guardian article from a few years ago. The Guardian reported was it between 300 and 400,000, and those are conservative estimates, women who were repeatedly gang raped, girls as young as 9 taken to camps. This is a matter of fact. This is a strategy used by Pakistan. It is in their culture.
Yeah, and it was actually approved by religious leaders in Pakistan and political leaders, calling these women war booty. And if you take women as slaves as war booty, you can rape them. All this is documented from the 1970s.
The clerics in Pakistan encouraged it by saying the Bengalis as a race are not really Muslim. They are inferior Muslims. They've been infiltrated by the Hindus and the customs from the Indians. And the reason why it's relevant, Nick, I'm not giving people a history lesson, is that these are the very same arguments used by men who were convicted that we know about, who gang raped these white girls. They are less worthy than us. They are trash. They are whores. They are, they are asking for it. It's their culture. It's their religion. So it's the very same. And Nick, I spent my early career working in working class white communities where we tackled prejudice in an old-fashioned way. Yeah. And we talked about how, and there were anti-racist programs, government programs, all of that. Why are we now too afraid to tackle what is clearly racist attitudes embedded in some of our ethnic minority communities that has led to the conditions that facilitated the gang rape of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of working class white girls? Where is the government intervention?
Cowardice again. Cowardice. We've not had any decent leaders, I don't think, since Thatcher. Everyone has been a career politician. And when you're a career politician, all you care about is your career. Hence why you're a career politician. You're just looking to climb that greasy pole. And Jess Phillips is a great example. Jess Phillips is a gobby cow. She's been going on for 10 years about violence against women and girls, criticizing everybody. She's called people rape, genocidal rapists. She's used a term that Elon Musk used against her. She's called people that. She's heavily criticized the Tory party, and rightly so. 14 years in power and it did nothing. But the second she gets into power, the second she's got her hands on the levers of power and she can do something, she goes, oh no, my career is more important now.
It gets worse because not only does she deny it, then she tries and say, oh, you can do a local investigation. She knows full well that a local investigation does not have the powers to investigate. A local investigation cannot go and find the documents. A local investigation is reliant on those who are being investigated to present the documents. Now just those simple things. A local investigation does not have the power to call witnesses. The witnesses can refuse and have refused. The Telford inquiry, where a judge led it, that has more powers than just a local investigation. He himself referenced how he did not have the powers to go where we needed to go. And so what? She is facilitating a cover-up. She is facilitating a white woman, and I say a white woman because people have racialized this and said it's the Muslims, it's the Asians. This is more than just about community relations. This is more than just about a race perspective. This is about power and maintaining power. This woman, Minister for Safeguarding Girls, refuses a public inquiry that wants to investigate the confirmed cover-up of the gang rape of thousands. Well, they won't give us a number, will they? So I'm saying thousands because they won't give us a number. If the number was low, they'd confirm the number, wouldn't they, Nick? If the number was 5, 10...
It's at least 100,000 girls over the last 40, 50 years. It's at least 100,000 girls.
And she won't. And then what happened was the politicians picked up on it, and the survivors from other places, and I respect that. And they saw, oh, they've made progress in Oldham. Not stop to think how we've made progress in Oldham and what the journey we've been on. and said, "Oh, what about Telford? What about Rotherham? What about Bradford? What about Newcastle?" Nick, as a father, how can I look at them and say, "This is about us and not about you"? I can't. This is about all of us. So we now found ourselves in a position where we're fighting for girls across the country, survivors across the country. And it's a weight, Nick. It's a weight.
Do you think Jess Phillips is going to survive this?
Jess Phillips will survive this. Because if Jess Phillips goes, it's all topples. We released a dossier of evidence, compelling evidence, on the role Jim McMahon played in the cover up. He is now a government minister. We released evidence of how Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, had signed off backing a report from Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, as one of the most thorough pieces of work ever done on this, on Commons letter-headed paper. She is part of the cover-up. Debbie Abrahams, the MP, is she on the Home Affairs Select Committee or something now, or some sort of powerful government committee she chairs? She had me, or tried to have me arrested. I was questioned under caution by Greater Manchester Police as a result of a series of doctored social media posts that she submitted as evidence. She is part of the cover-up. Children from her constituency were dragged into cars outside school gates. I have testimony. She is part of the cover-up. She would rather talk about Kashmir and Palestine rather than working class girls in her own constituency.
Do you think we've crossed the Rubicon now? The Rubicon on this matter? Do you think this is the beginning of the end of this? Do you think the House of Cards is all going to fall down now? Maybe not today, but do you think there's no way of stopping this anymore now?
Nick, people couldn't get in touch with me now from across the world and say, "Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence?" I gave my testimony, I think is the best way of describing it, on Miah Tushi's show. Yeah, he's all right. You know, people are, and my policy, Nick, so people are very clear. You and I are friends. So I have no issue saying that. You know, I've known you from before. I know of your work. And I don't have to agree with you political and everything. You don't have to agree with me political and everything, but we're friends. If we saw each other on the street, we'd say hello. If you had the time, I had this time, we'd stop to have a drink with each other. And yeah, there are people who've come to this from maybe political viewpoints that I am not aligned with. It does not matter. It is not my responsibility to pick and choose who I speak to. It is my responsibility and my duty to speak to everyone I can about what has happened and lay out the evidence. Yeah. And if people want to accuse me of one thing or another, particularly in government, well, then the government needed to have done something, hadn't they, Nick? They needed to have done something yesterday. They needed to have done something for the 10 years previously. And I talk about the Conservatives as well as talking about this new Labour Party. My anger at this new Labour Party, but it's not just on this issue, is it? Is they made promises of what they would do. Well, they failed the pensioners, they failed the WASPy women, they failed the students, and now they failed the girls, yeah, who've been groomed and gang raped. And the pensioners, yeah, all of that. Sorry, Nick, I just need to move something on my screen so I can see you better. And so I think they will survive. I think have we passed the because I'm releasing evidence, Nick. I'm releasing evidence that people are seeing for the first time and saying, why have we never seen this before? Well, I've been releasing the same evidence for 6 years, Nick. The reason why they struggle with me is because I'm consistent. I'm not lying. I'm not making things up. I have there's an evidence trail. And thanks to social media, there's a whole host of posts. If people wanted to go and find out what I've said, they can, to you. You've got it on YouTube from last year, the year before. You know, there's an evidence trail. This man has been true to form throughout all of this, saying the same things, using the same evidence, speaking in the same coherent manner. I'm not a deranged madman. I'm just a passionate father who wants the best for his town and now realizes he has a responsibility and duty. I thought my days of serving my country are done, but it's clear those days have come back and it my country hasn't finished with me. And I have a duty now to serve yet again and make sure I do whatever I can to help right this wrong.
Yeah, I want to talk about Andy Burnham, but before we do, I just wanted to let you know that social media has not only changed the game, but social media itself is changing. Up to a couple of days ago, every time I've released a video about the grooming gangs, it's always been published, but it's always been demonetized straight away.
Same with mine. Same with mine. Yeah.
But I released some videos yesterday talking about the grooming gangs, having some in-depth discussions, and every single one of them was monetized. And it's like, oh, YouTube is changing some of their policies and some of the way that they do business. So even social media now is coming around to our thinking that this isn't a conspiracy theory, this isn't far right Nazis, this needs discussing. So social media is going to destroy the Labour Party and our uni party because they can't control the evidence and can't control the narrative anymore. But let's jump.
I find it interesting, just before Andy Burnham, I find it interesting that I woke up this morning because I released something last night and I'm very clear. And I'm not I'm a I'm a reluctant YouTube person. It's not my style, Nick. Most of my work has been done in the backgrounds, making other people look good, doing all the paperwork for them, running around doing this, doing that. And then when they speak and things change, you sit back and smile and think, okay, but I had a small part to play in that, and no one would ever know. That has been my career, before I came. So I'm reluctant in this space, but I released something last night, very clear, to encourage people. I have a dossier of evidence, information, dossier of information that I am prepared to hand over to any mainstream news agency in the United Kingdom who is prepared to tell the truth, who is first prepared to tell the truth using the evidence that we have released on social media over the last 5 years. Evidence, Nick. It's not conspiracy theories, evidence, detailed documents, transcripts using the evidence that we've released. Tell our story in Oldham, tell the people's story in Oldham of what happened and how we got this far, and I will hand over evidence that will bring down at least one government minister and likely, because of who that government minister is, take Keir Starmer down.
You've done all the work there. You've done all the work. It just takes one journalist to go, do you know what? I'm going to spend a few hours looking at this, speaking to you and looking at it. And if it turns out you're a nutcase and you've made it all up, I've lost a few hours. But if it turns out this guy's correct and he's done all the footwork and done all the work and it's all in a file for me, I can make an international name for myself as a journalist here. It's a win-win situation for a journalist who just wants.
Who is sharing this information? My name is Raja Miah. The Queen put a medal on my chest. 20 years of public service, sat in rooms with multiple prime ministers, secretaries of state, worked across the world. What am I gaining from this? My career is now ruined. I will never work again in the circles I came from, Nick.
Yeah, me too. I can never work in the charity sector again. And let's forget about me and you ever working for a council again.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen.
No.
Right, let's jump to Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham, I think, will resign as mayor this year because he wants to get to Parliament because he can see Starmer's not going to last much longer and he wants to be Prime Minister. Andy Burnham portrays himself as the heir to Blair, the most sensible, socialist, Labour Party member, and you'll be lucky to have me as an MP and lucky to have me as Prime Minister. I'm whiter than white. I'm on the working class side. I'm amazing. You've said several times now he's tarnished by this scandal as well.
Let me evidence this. Let me go through very rationally, very clearly, so people who are listening to you, so they understand the way in which I present the information. Andy Burnham is on record saying he heard on the radio the betrayed girl's Maggie Oliver speaking, and that's why he did what he did. He launched an investigation. The investigation Andy Burnham launched, where he recruited Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway. I think one of them had come from Rotherham, where they'd been involved in managing the situation in Rotherham. No, he's a veteran of Hillsborough. He knows that the reviews that he has the power as the mayor to launch does not have the power to get to the truth. So the review in Manchester, Victoria Goglia, which was the first part. Maggie Oliver turned up to the meetings. You remember all of that, yeah? Victoria Goglia's, I think, grandmother, who's passed, I think, since, in absolute tears as to what had happened.
She was not only raped, she was murdered as well.
She was murdered. She was murdered. There was her diary. Her diary was still hidden. This is a diary of a child who's documenting what's going on to her. Why was that diary not released? Between the police and the council, what sort of investigators are you?
Or at least give him back to the family, because
No, give it back to you.
And then the family should decide.
Yeah, yeah. No, not that. There was minutes of meetings that had been lost. You've worked in the public sector. I've worked in the public sector. Minutes of meetings that had been lost. You know what? Which minutes of the meetings that had been lost? The minutes of the meeting between the council and the police that agreed to close down an investigation were 97 Pakistani, Bangladeshi, I'm not sure what they were, but 97 Muslim, men in Manchester, taxi drivers were involved, had been identified as members of a grooming gang. 97 men. Now, if you do the calculations based upon what anyone who knows about this, if there's 97 men involved, there's not one girl involved. It's a massive grooming gang. Yeah, you're talking thousands of girls involved.
Yeah. And then talking about those minutes, I know from Manchester City Council experience, everything you put on a computer in Manchester Council is backed up. It's backed up for years. You can delete the minutes off your computer and off the server, but those servers are backed up and backed up. You cannot delete minutes and get rid of them completely. They're there somewhere, unless someone is heavily involved in this and goes through it all and deletes all. But no manager, no worker, no manager, no senior manager,
no operational staff can do that.
Can do this. This has to come from the top.
Yeah. So that's the thing. First of all, yeah. If I was the mayor, and a report comes out that the minutes of the meeting that authorized the closing down of an investigation that allowed a grooming gang of just under 100 men to continue, I would be shouting and screaming about that. Wouldn't you?
I'd be looking for heads to roll.
Yeah. So that's one. Two, of course, the investigators did not have the power. Burnham knew that. So the police officers, some of the senior council staff, none of them turned up for the investigate, to be questioned.
How do you catch criminals if you have to rely on the criminals telling you they're criminals?
Yeah.
That's what that report was.
Yeah. They relied on the paperwork to be handed by those they were investigating because they had no statutory powers to go and get the paperwork. Burnham knew all of this. And then when the report came out, he looked, serious and all the rest of it. And on it goes, no one has been held accountable. He said he was forced to go on Sky on Sunday. I think Trevor Phillips interviewed him. And he talked about people being charged, convicted. No one's been convicted. And if they have, tell me. Because I can't go and find details of anyone who's been convicted. And the 97 men, have they been identified, all 97 of them? No. I will tell you what I have been able to piece together. And whether you believe me or not is entirely up to you and the people who listen to you. That investigation got closed down because who those 97 men were and who they were connected to. And the power they had to mobilize votes and all the rest of it in the communities they come from.
Yeah, it's political. This has always been political.
Yeah. So that is what took place, first of all. He then commissioned an assurance review in Oldham because his friend Sean Fielding had gone to him after we'd exposed what had happened in Oldham and there was no hiding place. Sean Fielding, first of all, recruited a man called Dr. Mark Peel, and the newspapers kept saying, renowned, renowned, renowned. I ripped him to pieces. Publicly, I ripped him to pieces, and Dr. Mark Peel ran away. Didn't even come to the town to pick up. Because he wasn't stupid. He'd looked at it and thought, hold on, I'm not going anywhere near this and ruining my reputation because these guys are clearly educated. They understand what's going on. They're mobilized. They'll rip, the terms of reference set by the council. They'll rip me to pieces. He refused. Burnham picked up on it. The same Andy Burnham who had just weeks earlier his office had given Sean Fielding's girlfriend a job because that's how this city operates. Burnham's assurance review, the terms of reference, still a matter of public record, makes reference to Operation Hexagon in the terms of reference. In the terms of reference. Operation Hexagon is a joint Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council operation set up to investigate me and anyone else in my town who spoke out against the grooming and gang rape of children. It's a sort of police operation that he set up for football hooligans. Sean Fielding, in that period, leader of the council, went after 3 people that I know of. He probably went after more. In his official capacity as leader of Oldham Council, remember he's working with Burnham at the time because he's gone to Burnham to launch the review. Sean Fielding wrote to a man called Mark Wilkinson, who worked in probation service, worked with children, young people who were rehabilitating them from, crime and that sort of stuff. Former police officer, distinguished career, tried to have him sacked. Formal letter-headed paper. He went to a lady called Jane, I forget her surname, who was a PhD student at Manchester University. Tried to have her sacked. Letter-headed paper. Do you see reputable people who are asking questions publicly? He's trying to have them sacked. He went to a friend of mine, a former Liberal Democrat councillor, Mohib Uddin. Mohib Uddin is a senior HMRC inspector. 8 times, 9 times they wrote to the highest level of HMRC, civil service, trying to have him sacked. Because he spoke out against the grooming and gang rape of children. These are people who Mohib knew me, the other 2 had never met me, who saw the evidence I was releasing and dared to ask questions.
We will not tolerate dissent. That's the golden thread that runs through all this. We will not tolerate dissent.
So Andy Burnham's assurance review rocks into town with that in the background, knowing that who is going to come forward and give evidence, knowing this is what happens to you. And Operation Hexagon is specifically referenced in the terms of reference. Who in their right mind is going to come forward and give evidence? Right. The next thing to do with the review team, they contacted me. I'm very clear. I will give testimony, particularly when the entire review was set up as a consequence of what I'd released. But the only way in which I'll give testimony, Nick, is either in the open, where people can hear my testimony, or at the very least, my testimony recorded, and word for word documented, whether it's in the appendix, where it's, whatever you do with it, at least it's word for word recorded. You know what they said to me?
I know what they said.
They don't record testimony. They take selective notes of what they think is important.
So it's down to interpretation again, isn't it?
Yeah. They take selective notes of what they think is important, and then they write it up. I refuse for obvious reasons, wouldn't you?
You don't want your name on a cover up and using you in your work to say, look what we've done, and there's no issues here.
There's a former Labour Party councillor, 2 former Labour Party councillors who gave evidence who's in the report, whose cases are in the report. One was a man called Kaiser Raymond. Kaiser Raymond withdrew from Andy Burnham's assurance review after the review team sent him his testimony written up in a way full of inconsistencies and inaccuracies.
Yeah, because it should be recorded.
Yeah. How much do you know? You can record it on one of these now. Yeah. Never mind. Never mind anything fancy. Yeah. The other councillor, former councillor, Hughie MacDonald, who goes back to the time when he was sacked effectively by the Labour Party for whistleblowing and speaking out. Email trail proves it. In terms of his authenticity, the most senior magistrate in Oldham until he retired. So this isn't some, nutcase. He's refused to sign off on his testimony because it kept coming back and kept coming back with inaccuracies. Cover up. I had Maggie Oliver intervened because they were writing a report into the grooming and gang rape of children and had got to the point where they were just about to publish it. And you know what? They'd not spoken to a single survivor.
Yeah. They're investigating a crime and don't speak to the victims
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because they didn't want to speak to the victims.
This is Andy Burnham. This is Andy. This is classic Andy Burnham, right? I'm doing this, but you look at the substance, and the Manchester Evening News, as you know, are like this with Burnham, as you know. So they're not gonna critique this. The Manchester Evening News, the woman from there, Jennifer Williams, now works for the Financial Times. They're a clique. They're all a clique who cover up for each other. It's a metropolitan elite. Yeah. So you've got no victims until Mike Oliver gets involved, and then they meet with and placate one victim. They don't really do anything. The placater, the report's been written, right? It then turns out that they've got these 10 case studies. They don't even tell us how many children were groomed and gang raped in the time limited window that they investigated. That time limited window that they investigated in the terms of reference excluded schools and youth clubs. So let's exclude the very places from where children were being groomed and gang raped. Let's have a window of just 3 years, 2011 to 2014 or something.
Damage limitations. It's a classic ploy.
Let's produce this report and then shout and scream it wasn't a cover up. Raja Miah is a liar. Let's move on. Raja Miah is a political campaigner. I took 100 people with me to the council meeting. You've all seen the footage with the banners and people ran, and we took over that council meeting and we exposed Andy Burnham. We chased him out of town as a liar, as neck deep in the cover up. And now he says, well, I did the best. I commissioned the review. No, mate, what you did was partnered the cover up because your cover up report was then used by your Labour Party MPs, Angela Rayner, Jim McMahon, Debbie Abrams, to release a statement on parliamentary letterheaded paper validating that assurance review. It's time to move on. There's nothing going on here. And then they stood in Parliament and called me and my townsfolk far right and racist. And then in the background, during all of this, Nick, Andy Burnham, Police and Crime Commissioner, is fully aware that I am being repeatedly maliciously arrested at the instructions of Labour Party politicians. For 3 years, I bounced from courtroom to courtroom, standing and saying every time, not guilty. This is a politically motivated prosecution, not guilty. The first case collapsed against me. It was Arood Shah, who's the leader of Oldham Council and Andy Burnham's equality lead. Andy Burnham's equality lead hangs off the arm of a convicted heroin dealer. Andy Burnham's equality lead. She fabricated a case against me and had me arrested. Ran away from testifying. All the time I was having pressure put on me. Plead guilty, you'll get a deal here, you'll get a deal there. I am not having a single mark on my reputation. No, I am over 50 years old now. I've come from those communities. You make choices, Nick. You make choices whether you go and, hang out with the criminals or you make choices whether you go to the library and study. You make choices whether you get out of bed in the morning and go to school. You make choices whether you come in at night and go to bed so you're awake in the morning to go to school. My mother was a single parent. She raised me, raised my brother, raised my sister. Every one of us have had distinguished careers.
Mm.
She died, Nick. She died crying
Yeah.
because I had not been cleared yet.
And that's the punishment. The punishment isn't necessarily to have you locked up, because they may know we haven't got evidence for that. The punishment is the process of being arrested, being humiliated, waiting 6 months for a court case, having to spend your own money to defend yourself, having the pressure, the stress. That's the punishment.
They published, because this is the coordinated smear campaign, the newspapers published I had been arrested as part of a child sex exploitation investigation. Greater Manchester Police, I'm not a criminal, have no criminal record. 8 police officers had dawn raided my house that first time I was arrested. They put me under house arrest. I had to spend every night in this apartment. I was looking after my terminally ill mother at the time. I could not go and spend the night with her. I had to stay here. I the brother of a councillor. And this is a matter of public record. None of this is hidden because I published all of it. The brother of Councillor Shahid Mushtaq, Arud Shah's right-hand man, his brother, Tahir Mushtaq, a man called Tahir Mushtaq, published online that I was I was gay. This is the man he's in a relationship with. This is his home address if anyone's interested.
You could absolutely class that as incitement to violence.
I reported it all to the police. Andy Burnham's Police and Crime Commissioner delegated power. So what's she called? Kate Green refuses to launch an investigation into the clear mobilisation of Greater Manchester Police to try and incite, if not murder against me, violence against me. They published the front door of my house, Nick, online.
I think the only good news I've got for you is...
No, I'm happy with this because we've come through this, Nick. Look,
we have, but I think
the world knows.
The good news is when all this happens, Keir Starmer wasn't Prime Minister, because if he was, there's a very good chance you'd have ended up in jail.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't play these games. He doesn't play by dealing with the law, and he goes straight for political prisoners. He'd have had you in court several days later, put on remand. He'd have twisted your arm and tried to make you plead guilty, which you never would have done. But that's how he treated all the other political prisoners.
So I'm very clear on this because people ask me about this, Nick, and if you don't mind, I'd like to make reference to this. People ask me about the riots in August and what took place. Listen, as someone who's worked in government, first and foremost, our job was to make sure we could calm people down. We could try and give them the information and try and go and work in these communities and calm people down, not throw gasoline on, and that's what they did by demonizing an entire community. Forget what they knew before. And I've worked in counter-extremism. I manage contracts for the Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism. It is a world I know. There is not a chance in hell that the Home Secretary would not have been briefed almost immediately after the police identified that person had Al-Qaeda material. Yeah, not a chance in hell that the Home Secretary would not have been briefed.
It would have been a sackable offence if someone hadn't have told her. Yeah.
And then people he fanned the flames, and the worst of people came out. And sadly, so many decent people got caught up in that because that's human nature, and I look at some of the careers destroyed, the lives destroyed, and they are political prisoners.
They are.
Put them in prison. People who've done things, of course, put them in prison.
Yeah.
Someone who tried to burn tried to burn one of the hotels down.
If you try to set fire to a hotel, you need locking up.
Yeah, put him in prison. No one's saying don't put that man in prison, are we?
If you're throwing bricks at police officers, you need locking up. But if you're stood on the street shouting at the police and shouting slogans,
That man who died, the man who died in prison.
exactly, you don't deserve locking up for that. Tweeting something that you might find offensive or might be disgusting, you don't go to jail for that.
No.
But yeah, but they wanted to muddy the water so they could say that everybody was like the man who tried to set a hotel on fire. Every person there was just like the people throwing bricks and bottles at police officers. But they were 1% of the people on those demonstrations, and they should have been highlighted and dealt with. But they wanted to scare the British public to say, don't you go on the street.
Yeah, don't you dare say anything. Don't you go on any marches. This is what will happen to you.
Exactly.
This is what will
Exactly.
happen to you.
Yeah.
And that's, Andy Burnham, he knows. He's neck deep in this. His assurance review that's now published, his own investigators have run away. They've quit. Newsom Ridgway have quit. They've not finished their work. They've quit. Where is the front page of the Manchester Evening News that says grooming gang inquiry investigators quit?
That should be a headline.
And that is why we are where we are, talking in the spaces that we're talking with. And I say to people, take courage, take hope. Because if you're listening to this, you're another person that we've got on side. And every day our numbers grow. Every day that passes, we grow stronger. And we will win this.
There's more of us than them.
There will be a public inquiry, and those responsible, not just for the heinous crimes of gang raping our children, but those responsible for facilitating a political cover-up to protect their careers and protect their positions of power, there is a reckoning coming.
There is. Could you do me one favor? When I finally get into government and I've got some levers to pull, and I ensure we have this national public inquiry, will you sit on the board?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, we need people like you, Maggie Oliver, and people who've spent decades in this fight, people who know how all the other reports were covered up and failed, because we need a far-reaching, powerful, independent inquiry that can arrest people who do not turn up for interviews.
What we need is to move away from just the language of public inquiry. I'm starting to use this language. I've spent time working with people who are locked up in Robben Island, Desmond Tutu. I've sat next, and listened to him. All of that. We need a Truth and Justice Commission. We need a Justice Commission. Yeah. So when the state has committed atrocities against its people, it's not a public inquiry. You launch a justice. A Truth and Justice Commission.
I'm gonna steal that off you if you don't mind.
I am here. I believe in a God, Nick, and I believe more and more that my life was made what it was for me to be in this place, to be the difference that I need to be for people who cannot be the difference. And I am where I am meant to be, and I will be the best person I can for as many people as I can. And thank you, Nick, for taking the opportunity to speak with me.
No, I think that's a great place to end. We need a truth and justice investigation into the cover-up and the atrocities committed on UK citizens, facilitated and ignored by the UK government. That's what we need.
Thank you.
Cheers. See you soon.
Take care, Nick. Thank you.
Bye-bye.